So you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Joe Lansdale, and
Hi.
I'm a writer. And we're on martial arts school. Yeah, it was late 80s, which is the TV series. They put it back in that time, which I think is so funny because I don't think of that as a historical time. That's when I was writing it. But I was just going to write this one book about a guy named Hap. I had no Leonard in it. I didn't plan on a series. And as soon as I started writing, Leonard appeared. But I didn't know who he was. I thought he was a minor character. Then he popped up again. And then I learned some things about his past. I learned that he was gay. I learned that he had been in the military. I learned that he was a Republican. I learned that he and Hap had a long-standing relationship as friends. And the story just developed from that. And then I thought, I'm done. 3 years later, I was trying to write a novel for Mysterious Press. And the novel I was writing, I wasn't very happy with. But Hap kept talking to me. He was getting in the way. And I kept thinking, shut up. I'm trying to write this book. And then I realized this character from this other novel is still speaking to me. And then all of a sudden, Hap and Leonard were there again. And I wrote Mucho Mojo. And then the series has continued from there with some, stops in between. I had 8 years between books one time, 5 years for one time. And so my characters don't age during that time. Unfortunately, I do. I believe, counting those that are forthcoming, I have one coming out next week, and then I have one coming out next year. So I think that will be 11. If you count the short story collections, there's 2 collections of short stories, of which one kind of makes up almost like a mosaic novel. I did it out of order. The stories are there, but if you read it, it all falls into place, and it's kind of threaded together by Hap's narration between stories. It's called Blood and Lemonade. No, I do. I write them linearly. The short stories, yeah. I'm still fighting that hot sauce. The short stories, I didn't worry about that because they stand on their own. But I thought they kind of made up. It was more like a collage that made up this sort of novel, this Blood and Lemonade.
Yeah. So, yeah, Leonard's such an interesting, well, they're both really interesting characters. I mean, they're anti-heroes, and I love them both. And the representation, I think, is really interesting. And you were doing that very early. What kind of responses did you get about that?
Well, you had some people that were negative because, why have you got this gay guy as a hero and, the usual stuff and a black guy. But, 99% of my response was positive right from the first. People loved them. I've had people actually tell me I've changed my views on gays or I've changed my views about race. And I'm like, really? That's such a, I feel like I'm such a minor, thing. And for it to have a major impact means a lot. And I get things from people too, and not just on the Hap and Leonard books, but books in general. And it's what makes you realize that it's worth doing for a lot of reasons. But one of them, I can't tell you how many people have told me, said, I was going through such a bad time, and I found this series, and I just fell in love with these characters. It helped me get through my hospital time, or my, parents being ill, or fighting cancer. I mean, things that you just, you would never think about when you're writing the novels. And I had one guy that said, I'd gone to prison, I'd made kind of a fool out of myself, and I picked up this book of yours. It wasn't even a Hap and Leonard, it was one of the others, and said, it just sort of rejuvenated me. And to think that fiction can do that, to think that it can have that impact, that's kind of humbling.
That's some good writing there.
Well, I try. I won't go that far.
No, seriously, if you can write a character that is complex, like
That's
a real human being, that's a
both James and Michael, who played those, have both told me the characters are very hard to play. And you wouldn't think that because of there's a freewheeling style that I use, which, I don't want to claim too much for myself, but I try to use it as a deception in a way, because it's a way of pulling people into the narrative. It's a way of making the narrative accessible and yet being able to touch on social issues. That doesn't mean I actually do that every book as much. Sometimes I just want the characters to be the characters with each other and people around them. And so the issues are not as prominent. And of course, as time moves on and people change, it becomes less important. And that's a good thing. Leonard, he fought for his country, and he is, he's someone that shares a more standard patriotical view of the country. But just like all complex people, there are variations. And then Hap is a patriot too, but his viewpoint was he was anti-war. But they both believe that they both were sincere. My brother and I were on opposite sides of the fence, but we both understood that each other had different beliefs, and at the core, we had the same reason. We both considered it patriotic. We both considered it right. I'm sure that, there was certain conflict there, like there would have been between Hap and Leonard, But to me, that's what one of the things I think makes the characters complex is that they have 3 or 4 key points where they're exactly alike, and they're like family. They're brothers. They're brothers like me and Andrew Vax, and like a few other people in my life where we don't have to discuss it that much with each other. We don't even have to be around each other all the time, but it's still the same no matter when. When anytime I see Andrew, it's like I saw him yesterday. And when we talk in email and phone, it's, he's always like the grumpy big brother in the best sense of that. I love him dearly. And that's the kind of relationship they had. They fit. I think that's what I can say best is that they fit. And they also range from being very, I say, complex in their discussions to being very juvenile, because they're like little kids. In the series they grew up together as kids. In the book series that isn't true. They met in high school, late high school, but they became very, very close to each other. But they've still got that sort of like, I'm picking at my brother, I'm picking at him. So I always try to run a little bit of a juvenile streak through there too, because I think that's how people really are. And I also have them discuss things that aren't politically correct. And the idea that somebody's liberal and that they never discuss this, or the fact that they're conservative and they never discuss this, isn't really true. What people do with each other can feel comfortable about is what I try to put in the books. Instead of it being so politically correct, it loses the opportunity to discuss things openly. And there's a political correctness that's righteous, and then there's political correctness that's just absolutely absurd. It's like somebody can get butt hurt over anything if they really so try. And so that's what I try to do with Hap and Leonard. They have discussions, they have disagreements, and they have agreements. And even when they have a big fight, usually the next day, it's like, what are we doing for lunch? That kind of. Yeah, the drive-in. The drive-in was one of those books that came out of dreams. I had a series of dreams. When I was trying to come up with stories, my wife would make the greasiest, least healthy popcorn ever made in the universe with Kroger grease. And that's from Kroger, and it was just lard, essentially. I don't even think they sell it anymore. I think somewhere along the line they decided it was like a toxic health hazard or something. But she would make this and fix it up, and I would eat it, and it would give me weird nightmares. And I would get up the next morning and write them, and it was always a story I could write in one day, and I'd sell them, every one of them. And so I began to have this weird dream about being in this drive-in theater. Partly that's because I grew up with drive-in theaters, and that was a culture that was part of my culture, And so that dream kept staying with me. So I wrote an article. Twilight Zone asked me to write an article about something, so I wrote an article about drive-ins. And an editor saw the article. He had bought a book of mine already, The Magic Wagon, Doubleday, Pat LaBruto. And he said, I think there's a novel here. And I thought, well, I need a novel, so there'll be a novel there. And so I sat down, and it was the hardest novel I've ever written. I had the least fun writing it. I wrote it in about, I think, 2 to 3 months, I forget what, and just get up every day and do it. And I turned it in, and I just thought, oh my God, this is terrible. And then when I got the page proofs back, I read it, and I thought, wow, this is unique. I did do what I thought I was doing, or wanted to do. Not what I thought I was doing, but what I'd hoped to do. And I became very fond of it, because I do think it is a groundbreaker in its own way, because there's never been anything quite like that. And it goes in and out of print all the time, which I think it probably deserves some publisher who really wants to keep it in print, because it has influenced a tremendous number of writers. I mean, my fan mail on it is amazing, and it's been optioned for film, it's been comics, and I'm really proud of it, because the idea was to make a story and in one sense felt like those low budget movies, but in another sense it's really about blind belief. There's this whole thing with, the numerology, and he mentions all this at first, and all this stuff which all falls by the wayside. And then we have this popcorn king that comes along, and then everybody latches onto him, sort of like a Trump character. And this was the whole idea long before that, because it had been done before. And so I was playing with all that, the need to believe even in the face of facts that tell you otherwise. And so it was entertaining, it was fun, it was a little bit scary, a little bit creepy, certainly a little bit odd. It was freewheeling, and yet it was a vehicle for those things for me. And so I'm very proud of that book, very proud of it. And I consider it one of my best books. It's certainly probably my most imaginative piece.
Very unique.
At least long piece. I've done some short
unique.
stories that I think are just as unique. But that's me talking about myself. And, but you know what? I'm not that far off 70 years old, and I've been doing this for a long time, all my life actually. And so I feel like I've earned a little place to say, yeah, I did something. So I can live with that.
How about, you want to talk about Bubba Ho-Tep?
Bubba Ho-Tep, wow. It's another one that I wrote and I didn't think I thought, oh my God, this is terrible. And I was going to write a letter and withdraw it, because I got to thinking about it, and before I could do it, I got a letter from best one in the book. We love it, and then I reread it. And I thought, yeah, I like it better than I thought. And then later, of course, it made the film, and which has led a lot more people to the story and other works of mine. And the film's magnificent. I love it. I think it is the closest interpretation to my work. It's not in the spirit of, as I described earlier, where you just grease up and wait. It's very much like what I had in mind, and I think if the budget had been a little bit more, there were a couple of special effects and things in the story that he might have used, but had the budget been too much more, it wouldn't have been that fantastic film with Bruce Campbell and Ossie Davis and Don Coscarelli directing, and he scripted it, and went to Bram Stoker for the script. But the thing that I loved about it is he tried to do the story as the story and succeeded. He made very few changes, because he believed in the power of the narrative. And what's weird is I never thought that could be filmed. And I remember when I wrote it, I told my brother, I said, I've written something that will never be optioned, will never be filmed. And it was the first thing of mine that was ever filmed. And Don asked me if I wanted to do the script, and I turned it down because I didn't think it could be done. Then he sent me the script, and I went, I had a few suggestions, and then Bruce had a few suggestions, and they ignored my suggestions and did Bruce's, because they were my suggestions. Some of them were too. So we both got the same. So I got what I wanted, But you always get smarter when you're the actor and you're the lead, which, there's understanding. There's
Bruce Campbell is.
Hey, Bruce Campbell's Bruce Campbell. Yeah. A funny little anecdote, my son, who was very young then, was and is a fanatic Bruce Campbell fan, loved him. He said, Dad, is there any way we could get Bruce Campbell in this? I said, I don't really get to choose, And then Don called me and said, what do you think about Bruce Campbell? I said, God damn it, that's who I would love, that, And so I was a hero to my son, because they got Bruce Campbell. I took him out to the set, and he got to meet Bruce. And then, Bruce came here and did a film festival with Don, and he's just a, great guy. He's become a family friend. We love him. We think the world of him. He's really a good person. He's not your typical Hollywood person. In fact, he's not Hollywood at all. And I think he and I both bond a little bit over that. We work out there a little, but we're our own thing. We're in our own place, And we like being around people that, know us, but they're not impressed by that, or it's not a big thing for them. They go, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. You do that, let's go do this. Let's go, do martial arts. Let's do whatever.
Magic Wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a really interesting, and I know it's been optioned a lot of times, and no one's really been able to pull it off.
Yeah, it's been optioned a couple of times. Really not that many, but it has been. It's hard to pull off because it's magic realism. It's like a story of mine called The Pit, which is a totally different kind of story. But it's been optioned 11 times or 12 times, and there have been scripts done on it, and I haven't liked any of them because they don't seem to know what the story's about. It always comes down to just these two guys fighting in a pit, and it's an excuse to hire two wrestlers or two mixed martial arts guys, which I respect all that. Don't get me wrong. I'm a martial arts guy myself. But the idea that that's what it's about fails every time. That's not what it's about. It's more fantastic than that. It's sort of like Alice in Wonderland meets Flannery O'Connor, and that's missed. And another reason for that, that's what I was talking about earlier. It's hard to get that atmosphere and feeling in a film. but it can be done, and I keep hoping that that's what will happen. But David McKenzie, who did Hell and High Water, had it last. There have been a number of other people before that, but nobody has really whipped the script. And the scripts that they might have felt they whipped didn't get used because the options ran out or somebody's interest ran out. And I'm almost grateful for that. You know, I always figure if I sign it over and they pay me, I've made a pact that you get to do what you want. If you put me on as an executive producer, or I feel like I have a say now. It doesn't mean that you have to do what I say, but I get to say it. I think Jim Mickle and Nick D'Amici will tell you I'm very straightforward about what I believe should be done. But I'm also at that point, and I'm often pretty sarcastic about it, but I mean it humorously. But because I know that really they got the right. I told Jim when he did Cold in July, look, here's things I think, but ultimately, baby, this is your picture. You got to do what you're going to do because you've got to be comfortable with it. So that's the way I look at it. But I think when I am a producer, I get to have my say, because sometimes my say makes more sense, and they go, oh, okay. In the last season of the Hap Leonard series, the Two Bear Mambo, I fortunately was invited by John Worth to the writer's room. I got to spend a couple of days discussing that and talking about it. I like to think that that made some impact, because when I saw the scripts in the series, I thought, you know what? They really got it this time. And I think it's a hard thing to get hold of, you know? So Magic Wagon, I hope.
I think it's a particularly hard one.
It's a very hard one because it's kind of magic realism mixed with, or is this stuff really happening? Is there any fantastic element at all, or is it in Buster's view of what he sees? You know?
Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
It's one of my favorites now.
Yeah, but I unless they could do it right, I don't want to see it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am too. And when I've talked to people that wanted to do it, there's just times when I just went, no, I don't think so.
So do you feel sort of like blessed because everything? I mean, Incident on Off Mountain Road, and you feel comfortable with that as one as well?
Yeah. But you know, Don Coscarelli gets me. I'm sort of disappointed that we haven't been able to do something else together. But you know, Jim Mickle, he gets me. And because you look at it, is Don did Bubba, and he did Incident on Off a Mountain Road. Jim did Cold in July, and the Hap Leonard series. So I've been fortunate, and always Nick D'Amici is that part of that. They're like McCartney and Lennon, and those people have got me. And so they've done 2 and 2. So now I need somebody else to come along, or one of them to come back,
Well, I would imagine that's,
Well, I've had.
I mean, because how many books are there now?
And Hap Leonard, about 11, I think. They haven't all come out yet, but in the pipeline. They're finished.
So we could have 11 seasons of
Well,
that.
I wish. I think things like that are hard to go that long. It doesn't mean they can't. I mean, you'll see certain things, and they'll be around 15, 16.
Supernatural, look.
Yeah, Supernatural. What, about 17 seasons or something?
Well, it's going to its 14th.
Going to its 14th, okay. But so you and Gunsmoke. That was around. Good grief,
yeah.
maybe
the
the king.
Of any of them,
Yeah, Law and Order.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and Law and Order Special Victims Unit's been around a long time. So there are ones that do that. I'm almost sort of the opinion that Hap and Leonard are best condensed and powerful. That's why the 6-episode thing appeals to me. I would love to see them do all the books. But there are certain things in the books that they can't do. They don't have the right to Jim Bob, who appears in some of them, because Cold in July was done, and I have a thing where, I can do Hap and Leonard, but Jim Bob can't appear unless they go to those people and make some kind of deal. So that's entirely, up to them, not me. But,
you've been pretty lucky, I guess, because
the
people you work with too.
Right, and I've had like 30-something options over the years. Some of them 7, 11 years in a row. Dead in the West was optioned, I think, I want to say 11 times, and it was finally bought by a film company in France, and they never made it. But I made, oh boy, I got a lot of money out of that deal. So I have to say, okay, that allowed me to continue writing, doing the things I wanted to do, but it disappoints me that it was never filmed. At one point, Don and Bruce wanted to do it, and we thought we could work with them, but they weren't willing to. And I think it's probably because they had some kind of complex framework deal where there were too many people involved, and so nobody had the clear control of it. I'm just guessing, but whatever happened, it never got made. And since that time, people have been influenced by that work so much in comics and books, and or by my Jonah Hex scripts and things, that they've kind of gone on, and its time may have passed.
So, do you have a favorite story or book that you've written? Or are they all your babies?
No, well, they're all my babies, but I think probably Paradise Sky is my favorite of all my novels. I think the most popular of all my novels is The Bottoms, with hands down. You know, The Thicket, Edge of Dark Water, those are all things that Sunset and Sawdust. I also wrote some young adult novels. I'm very fond of Fender Lizards, which is narrated by my daughter on the audiobooks, and she does a marvelous job. I thought, wow, that's nice. And she did one of my short stories for Nights of the Living Dead. She did the audio for my short story, Dead Man's Curve. And I also have one called All the Earth Thrown to the Sky.
Oh,
And I'm very fond of that one too. I mean, in one way you love them all and you go, oh, well, I like this one for that. The Hap Leonard series, to me, is just an ongoing adventure. I think some of the books are a little higher than others, some are a little, but it's collectively one work. And when you look at it that way, you kind of understand why it cycles that way, because I'm restructuring things, I'm having changes in their lives. I try to keep them the same but different.
Y'all want t-shirts?
Oh, fuck yeah.
I don't know what size I've got in here because I don't run the thing anymore. I own it, but I have other
That's
people.
what your wife said, yeah.
Yeah. What size do you wear?
I'd be extra large.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can find them. We'll see if there's some.
We are.
Yeah, I told your wife, I was like, if you have any t-shirts printed, I own a print shop in
Oh, yeah.
Houston.
Oh yeah, like I said, my guys run
Yeah.
that, but I can certainly tell them.
That's kids' shirts.
Yeah, I'm seeing. Yeah.
It's like this
But
tall.
they're
Like, yeah, no, that
Some of them
doesn't
are
fit.
mixed in though. These guys have got them all over the place now. I'm trying to see what's what. Okay, there's an XL.
That's
And there's
so
an
cool.
XL.
And you're okay with me letting people know this is your martial arts student?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I don't want to out you.
Yeah,
if-
I only teach private lessons now, but
Thank
there's
you
two-
so
those
much.
are our camp shirts. I think those are the only ones we've really got available right now.
Oh, those are
And
cool.
that was for our last camp was
Ooh, and there's
like
dry
actually
fit.
last year. We quit having camps.
Love the dry fit.
We used
It's
to have.
a 50-50 blend.
Yeah.
And it's wicking. It's moisture wicking.
She's vendor
So I like it.
geeking.
I know, I was like, oh, sorry.
I don't.
no,
I don't
they're
like
shirts.
I don't like the real thin ones. I like them have a little substance
body?
to them. You know, that's the best anyway. I hope.
Thank you so much.
But no, you're welcome to do that. But
Really?
yeah, well, it was great.
It's been
Yeah,
such
it
a
was
pleasure.
fun.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Next time you come, we'll fix your lunch a little different. We'll make sure you don't get something.
The
bad.
wussy New York girl.
I started
you know.
to say you probably don't want to get what I get because I get kind of an eclectic deal, and you probably would have done better with like one of the tamale, taco,
Or a
enchilada.
quesadilla.
What was that? Were they good?
They were-
I've never had those. I don't think.